Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm a very casual presenter. Please interrupt me if you have any questions. I'll stumble along the way. I'm usually holding my phone. That keeps me on time. Okay. We're starting late. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome. So my name is Michelle, and I am the older of two sisters and two sister senior living advisors, but I'm actually only 1/4 of the team. I have 2 employees. One of them is our nursing home specialist. Her name is Emily. She's a nurse. She's a licensed nursing home administrator, and she ran a facility for 3 years. I bring her up a lot, because she knows a lot about nursing homes. She often does this presentation, or I do. 6 to 1, half dozen the other. I like to present more, and she likes to talk about nursing homes. So it depends on who's going to come. But she designed the crux of the content in this presentation, and I made it look pretty. So when we started our company, my sister, her name's Allison, and I, 12 years ago now, we were an assisted living placement service. That was our function, was to help people find assisted living communities. And we did that really, really well for like 7.5 years. And then we realized that a lot of people have needs that can't be met in an assisted living, and they really do need a nursing home. And so we built out a nursing home advisory service. But before I start this presentation, I want to be clear. My goal in my business is not to help people find nursing homes. It's to help people stay out of nursing homes as long as possible. And if there is no other option and somebody needs a nursing home, we will be glad to help them. And this presentation is similar. I am not here to promote moving into a nursing home. My goal is to help you learn how to stay out of a nursing home. But if the circumstance should happen to arise where you do need a nursing home, knowing how to pick one is a big deal. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. Okay? Before I get started, I'd just like to have a sense, and this is something I only recently started asking because my father was a nursing home administrator, and my mom was the geriatric physical therapist that worked for him, and that's how they met, and I was the result. And back in the 70s, that was a little bit more acceptable than it is today. So I grew up in a nursing home. I didn't go to daycare with other children. I grew up and I was around the elderly, and that has changed my perspective, but I also take for granted that there are many people who have never been in a nursing home before. If you don't mind in raising your hand, has anyone in here never been in a skilled nursing home or a nursing facility before? And if you don't want to raise your hand, that's okay. It's really interesting that there is a segment of the population that has never, they drive by these facilities and they have no idea what's inside. And it's scarier that way, but not that much. So we're going to talk about the spectrum of senior care options. I want to put nursing homes in their place so that you understand the difference between nursing homes and the other options. That is in a presentation all by itself, so we are not going to spend that much time on it. If you're super curious, I'm happy to come back and do an hour-long presentation just on the spectrum of senior care options, but this one is focused on nursing homes. Then we'll talk about what to expect in a nursing home. The top 5 things to avoid when choosing a nursing home. Understanding the star ratings, and you'll understand what I mean by that when we get to that part of the presentation. Touring tips, information for discharging from the hospital. What are the takeaways from this presentation? And if I do my job well, there will still be time for questions and answers at the end. Does anyone have any questions before I get started? It feels so much more formal with a microphone. It just does. I don't know. And I can easily do it without, but then the TV won't know what I'm saying. And that's where, if you do have questions, I will completely forget to come bring the microphone over to you because it's not force of habit. Okay. This slide has a lot more information on it than I prefer to put on any slide. And I don't want to go over every bullet on here. I can make these slides available to you at any time. I might need a little prompting, but I am happy to do it. So for the purposes of this conversation and this presentation, I have bucketed a bunch of things together in interesting ways. So first of all, we have independent living. And in the context of this conversation, independent living includes everything that isn't assisted living or nursing homes. And normally, these are all sort of separate things of themselves. So continuing care retirement communities. A continuing care retirement community is where you buy in. And they have independent living, assisted living, a nursing home, and you buy in. That's the key there. An independent living community can offer everything a CCRC can offer, but you do not buy in. You rent it. And usually there's not a nursing home component, but there is one nearby. Independent living, assisted living, and then maybe there's a nursing home nearby. Senior housing is income qualified. If somebody needs to move to, you know what, I'm gonna shimmy. This isn't on wheels. This poor lady's doing this. I don't want her dancing the whole time. That's a lot of work. Is that better? Okay. And now I can do this. Okay. So I do like the microphone. What was I talking about? Oh, income qualified. So usually an apartment that is senior housing is 30% of your income. I'm going to step onto a soapbox for just a quick minute. If you think that you or your loved one might want to take advantage of income qualified housing in the future, at any point in the future, please get on the wait list now. For every town around where you live and where you want to be. There is a 3 to 5 year wait list in every town across Massachusetts for income qualified senior housing. You can always say that you do not want an apartment that is offered to you, but you can't get an apartment if you're not on the wait list. So just do it. Off the soapbox. Oh, still on the slide though. Okay. Over 55 is age limited. So a lot of times you'll see like mobile home parks or there are apartment complexes that are limited to people. And interestingly, I have my real estate license. Not that I sell houses. Don't ask me to list your house. I do know great realtors though. The only legal limitation that you can place on real estate is age. You can't limit by sex or gender or race or anything else, but you can have age limited, and there are places where you have to be over 55 or married to somebody who's over 55. Adult day health, home health services, and other community support like Meals on Wheels, that's what helped people stay in those options. People aren't truly just independent in those places. They are receiving support, but they're doing it piecemeal. Assisted living is different in that all 3 meals a day are included. Things like utilities, activities, sometimes care is available, transportation. There's a lot that is included, but it's like renting an apartment where you're getting care. The primary difference between these first 2 columns is that they're private pay. The third column is not. You can be private pay. You can be private pay anywhere you want. But the only place where you can receive care fully subsidized by Medicaid, in this state it's called Mass Health, is in a nursing home. So I'm going to talk about nursing homes for a minute, and this is the easiest way to understand, do you need a nursing home? First of all, nursing homes, most in Massachusetts, serve 2 primary functions. One is short-term rehab. Not all nursing homes provide short-term rehab, but most do. Short-term rehab is the goal of getting you back to where you came from, at or better than when you got there, and that's not what we're talking about today in this presentation. We're talking about long-term care. So for long-term care, why does somebody live in a nursing home long-term? There are only 2 reasons. Makes it sound kind of simple. 1, their care needs cannot be met anywhere else. 2, they can't afford the care they need anywhere else. Now, I'm going to simplify things a little bit further. I'm a big fan of oversimplifying. There are really only 3 places somebody can receive care in Massachusetts. Okay, 3.5. 1 is at home. That can be at your home, it can be in the home of a loved one, but it's at a home, in a home somewhere. Number 2 is in an assisted living. And in this, I'm talking about independent, any private pay community setting where you're receiving support. And 3 is in a nursing home. The half is because we do have some rest homes. There's very few. They are actually mostly in this area, ironically. But they're the half. They're sort of a hybrid between nursing homes and assisted living communities. Most of the state doesn't have them. We have the Doolittle home, the Pond home. There's a few places. Yeah, they're great little places. And I don't usually talk about them because they're not relevant to most people, but they are in your backyard. So I wanted to throw the half in there. So in terms of nursing homes, there's only 3 places that people can live: at home, in an assisted living / rest home, or in a nursing home. And there's only 2 reasons why someone would live in a nursing home. Their care cannot be met at home. Their care cannot be met in assisted living, so they have to live in a nursing home. Or they cannot afford the care they need at home. They cannot afford they cannot afford the care they need in assisted living, so they must live in a nursing home. That's it. So what are the care needs that someone might have that would require that they live in a nursing home? There are not that many. If someone has the finances and the ability to pay privately in an assisted living setting, unless they have a care need that includes a respirator or a ventilator or most types of feeding tubes, wounds that won't heal. If someone has the need to have assistance with injections and they cannot do the injections on their own, there are probably a dozen things that truly need a skilled nurse. If somebody has the finances, many of those things can even be met. Many of those care needs can even be met at home or in an assisted living. But it's expensive. So it's going to boil down to, I can't use my hands on the microphone at the same time. It's gonna boil down to a scale. There we go. Of balancing your care needs and your finances. And that's essentially what I do for work, is I talk to people and I help them work through the balancing of what their goals are, what they want for themselves, what their finances can support, and what their care needs require. Does anyone have any questions at this point? So in a nursing home, we talked about why someone lives in a nursing home. You can pay privately. If your care needs cannot be met anywhere else and you do not qualify for Medicaid, in this state it's called Mass Health. And I try very hard to just pick one term and stick with it. So I'm going to go with Mass Health, okay? And if you do not qualify for Mass Health, but you cannot live in any other setting, then the average cost of a nursing home in this state is $450 per day. So our goal is, let's start with what I said in the beginning. Our goal is to stay out of the nursing home as long as possible. And I'm preaching to the choir because the folks like yourselves who attend presentations like this are the ones who already are pre-thinking what you need. Tell your friends. I don't know why that says medical care. That doesn't mean anything to me right there. I think that's because that's where you get medical care is in a nursing home. Medical care is included. If you are in a nursing home, if you are on Mass Health, all of your expenses are included. So this is not a presentation about Mass Health, but many people, when I do this presentation, are like, what? $450 a day? I can't afford that. What am I going to do? The point of Mass Health is when you run out of money, it will kick in. My understanding, and there are professionals who specialize in this specifically that I can put you in touch with, but my understanding is a single individual has to have less than $2,000 in assets. That is not a whole lot of money. And when somebody has less than $2,000 in assets and they have care needs, you can't just be poor. You also have to have the need for 3 activities of daily living: getting dressed, going to the bathroom, grooming, medication management. Those are activities of daily living. Then Mass Health will fully subsidize your stay in an assisted living. And what that means is that all of your expenses are paid for. Your medications, your doctor's visits, everything is paid for. Food, utilities, you have nothing to worry about. But they take your income and they leave you with $72.80 per month. That is how much you are allowed to keep if you are a resident in a nursing home on Mass Health. You don't need a whole lot of money. They have a hairdresser. They have some dining out trips. You might want some new clothes, but everything else is covered. But you don't want to get there, right? So plan. There's a really big difference. The purpose of this presentation is that there is a really big difference between a good nursing home and a bad one. And knowing how to choose a good one, and I get to this at the end of the presentation, but the analogy that I like to use is that of a seatbelt. I don't put the seatbelt on with the intention of going out and getting into a car accident. But I put it on because if I do get into a car accident, I'm hoping that it will lessen the impact of that event. Knowing the nursing homes in this area that you would prefer to go to or prefer to have your loved one go to in the event of an incident is like having that seatbelt on, and hopefully it will reduce the impact of whatever crisis happened that led your loved one to you or your loved one to have to choose a nursing home. So in a nursing home, it is a clinical setting. It's a step down from a hospital. There are some nice ones, but there's no mistaking walking in that you've just walked into a nursing home. Some of them are carpeted and have music playing in the lobbies, the foyers, pleasant to be in, but they're really, you're in a nursing home. Most rooms in most nursing homes are shared. They're semi-private. There are some nursing homes in this state that provide excellent care that have 3 or 4 people to a room still. And they are renovating because that's a real hard sell to get people to want to move in. But also it's a problem because, we need more beds in this state, not less. We just need them to be in not 3 or 4 person rooms. The hospital bed is required. You can bring your own personal things like dresser, recliner chair. They all have hairdressers, dietitians, outside services like podiatrists, hearing aid specialists, dentists that come to the facility. There's a pharmacy. They all will just do your medications for you with their in-house pharmacy. Like I said, Mass Health is all inclusive. And, okay. So this list, I did it in a cutesy way to make it more entertaining, but it is compiled based on the calls that we get and the mistakes that people have made when they call us. And so other people may have a different list, but, the number 5, the 5th thing, that I think that people mistake when choosing a nursing home is picking the closest place. A lot of people do this. Oh, it's the one down the street. I just picked it because I drive by it every day. I hear these things all the time. Do you go to the hairdresser that's just down the street or the one you drive by every day? The answer to that is almost always no. We don't just pick the place because it's right down the street. But I'm not saying don't pick the place down the street. If that's the best one, or it could be a very good one and it's closest to you, great. But don't use that as the first criteria. Let's see where I'm at. Okay. So, depending on how much time I have is how long I give myself on this slide. I have a problem with crowdsourcing. Now, word of mouth is a way that we've been giving people referrals forever, right? It happens on the golf course or in the hairdresser, but now it's happening online. And I am not telling people, I'm not telling you, don't go online and ask for recommendations. I found my landscaper and all sorts of professionals that I've ended up hiring. I found because I went on Facebook and said, does anybody know an ex, blah, blah, including my hairdresser, by the way. She's in Foxborough, if anybody wants her name. So when you ask for people's opinions, keep a couple things in mind. For example, I'm going to use myself as an example because, well, I'm the easiest one. I go to networking events. Most of them are on Zoom these days. But we have it's called the 30-second introduction, right? They go around the room and everyone stands up and I say, hi, my name is Michelle Woodbrey. I own a company called Two Sister Senior Living Advisors, and this is blah, 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 blah. I then give recommendations to other people in that networking group. Right? I'm not in a BNI, but there's networking groups called BNIs, and like you are required to give recommendations to stay in a lot of these networking groups. And they're great sources of business and they're great sources of making friends and connections. But you know what? If I'm asking for a plumber and somebody says, oh, I know this great plumber, here, call this guy. His name's Dave. And I call Dave. Dave is not a very good plumber. The person who suggested Dave didn't actually use his service. They're just in a networking event group together, right? So if I recommend an attorney to you, is this an attorney that I've used, that my clients have used, or is it just somebody that I network with? There's different types of referrals. And if you're giving me a referral based on your personal experience of having used this professional, is your situation in any way similar to mine? And that's where we get tricky, because most of the time when I hear people who have ended up choosing nursing homes that they're less than happy with, it's because their cousin's aunt went there, or because their grandmother was there, or they knew someone that worked there 5 years ago, or maybe they know someone that works there now. I don't know. But these types of recommendations can be helpful. Nobody has, I don't think, bad intent. Everybody wants to be helpful, but you have to qualify where these recommendations are coming from and how relevant they are to your situation. I will use this exact example because it happened last week. I don't sleep all that well. I have a young child, a business to run, my own parents. It happens a lot. I'm up at like 2 a.m, and I shouldn't be. They call it doom scrolling. Facebook, right? Doom scrolling, right? So I'm on Facebook. I'm just scrolling through Facebook, like I should be sleeping. Anyway, I stumble across a post on some town group. I'm in a bunch of them just so I can advertise my business, or so they can give me anxiety and I won't sleep at night. Somebody posted, I need a nursing home for my 76-year-old mother. She's diabetic and on Mass Health. Does anyone have any recommendations? Okay. So I was the fourth person, because it was 2 a.m. I was the fourth person to chime in. And I said something to the effect of, you're going to get a lot of recommendations. If you'd like some help sorting through them, this is what my company does. And I posted my link. So I went back to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I checked that post. Are you ready for this? There were 304 comments. 304 people chimed in to tell what they thought this woman should do with her mom. And I counted. I spent about 20 minutes between 3 in the morning when I woke up at 7. And I spent a little while and I counted each of the recommendations of which ones would have worked for a 76-year-old woman who is on Mass Health and needs diabetic injections. And there were only 4. Of the 304 recommendations, 300 of them were no good. My mom loves the village at Willow Crossing. Brookdale is so great. So many things. But you know what? Those are great communities. They are. But not for someone on Mass Health who needs help with diabetic injections. So don't do that. If you need to choose a nursing home, don't go on Facebook and ask Facebook what nursing home you should choose. That's what this slide is about. Asking recommendations is fine. Crowdsourcing, word of mouth recommendations is fine. But pay attention to where the referral is coming from. Qualify it for yourself. And just don't blindly post on Facebook. I have a podcast with my sister. We are going to release our 20th episode next week. But I did a whole podcast on the crowdsourcing. I wish I could do many more. So choosing based on appearance. This is an interesting one because I think what a lot of people tend to do wrong when they choose based on appearance is because it's landscaped really nicely. It has good curb appeal. It's been recently renovated. It has nice bay windows. There's a chandelier. It looks new and modern. That is not the reason to choose a facility. Some of the best care that I know of are in some antiquated buildings. So when we look at appearance, don't be easily swayed by the aesthetics of the building, but that doesn't mean not to take into consideration cleanliness, for example. If you walk into a place and it's clearly not clean, that's a huge red flag, and don't go there. I was a little bit of a germaphobe even before COVID, and I have a thing about elevator buttons. I'm almost always, I can't move. I'm almost always wearing sleeves. And when I get to an elevator, I will touch the elevator. Doorknobs, I use my sleeve. I was always like that. But if you look at an elevator button, just look at it. If it's covered in fingerprints, they haven't wiped it down in a while, and they're like not doing. But since COVID, that's been a lot better. I have to admit, there's like a sort of a protocol where but it's just before COVID, it was a thing. I could tell you a lot about an assisted living based on the elevator buttons, or a nursing home, yeah, or at a hotel. There was a philosophy I learned in one of my trainings about coffee stains on an airplane. But if you notice there's coffee stains on an airplane, how well are they maintaining their engines? And if you walk into a hotel, I took my daughter to Six Flags the other day. We stayed at a La Quinta. It was a 2-star hotel, perfect for the two of us. She's 9, but we don't stay out often when she watches. She said, "This place is so fancy." She's all excited, and I look down in the vestibule, and the carpet's just all stained and torn, and it is what it is. It's perfectly what we're going to stay in tonight, but it is not a fancy hotel. You can tell, and you can tell if a place is clean by looking at the little details. Hopefully, and I think with COVID, places have been doing a better job. Obviously, if you notice anything that's unsafe, but culture I have here is, and this is something that I think a lot of people feel is a good takeaway from this presentation. If you want my opinion on what is the number one thing that makes a good facility or a good community, happy staff equals happy residents. In a facility where the staff are happy with their job, they're going to take good care of the people inside of that building. Now, I don't think that you're going to find anywhere where people are going to work like this these days. But what makes a good work environment is when you feel like you have ownership over what you're supposed to do. you don't feel like you have too much to possibly do. In other words, you're not too short-staffed, which is a hard thing to ask these days. And you have good management. Good, strong, solid management gives employees a structure, a safety net. They enjoy coming to work, and you can see that. And like I said, when you tour places, you're not looking for smiles and exuberant people, but you should see people who look like they have some intent. They should make eye contact with you. They should be doing something, on their way somewhere. People who are not happy with their jobs, they tend to be walking like this. I don't have anywhere to be. I have no motivation to get anywhere. If you see a lot of this in a facility, that's an indication that nobody has anywhere to be, and that can't possibly be the case. That can't be the case. So that's one of my indicators. Another one is if you see people leaning against a wall, chit-chatting with each other, especially if it's in a different language. That is not a good sign in a facility. So happy staff are talking to their residents. They're in the middle of doing something. They probably look up and make eye contact with you when you visit. Maybe they smile or nod. Maybe they don't, but they're doing something. Okay? You can tell. I can tell. It's something I can feel when I stop and I listen and I pay attention. A lot of people will ask me for checklists when they're going, and especially I focus on assisted living a lot more. Emily, like I mentioned earlier, tends to do our nursing home stuff, but people ask me for checklists, and I say, don't bring one. Not the first time. Just pay attention to the room around you and see whether you feel like this is a place that your loved one can be. 1:35. Where am I? Okay. So are the people happy? I recommend having a conversation with the administrator or the nurse. We'll get into that. But that's part of the appearance that is very important when choosing a facility is what do the people inside look like they're intent and doing their job willingly. I'm not under duress, but you know what I mean. Okay. So I have this as number 2, and I have the single biggest mistake. And like I said, I did this in a cutesy way because I want you to be like, what? This is number 2. The single biggest mistake people make when choosing a nursing home is waiting until they actually need a nursing home. If you find yourself in a position where your care needs cannot be met anywhere else, they cannot be met at home anymore, and I get those calls, usually from adult children, who tell me the social worker will not discharge their loved one home without 24/7 care. And they can't afford that. They can no longer go home. If you find yourself in that position and you haven't already thought about what nursing home you might like to have to go to, it's going to be harder for you. So that's the single biggest mistake. Plan ahead. I always like to say, and I used to have a slide in here to this effect, but I don't think people thought it was as cute as I did. I made it into a fortune cookie. It said, it's better to have a plan in place and not need it than to need a plan and not have one. Sounds like a fortune cookie, doesn't it? The number one mistake that people make if they are in a nursing home and they're not happy is staying there. You don't have to stay in a nursing home that you're not happy in. You can transfer. Transferring, if you're on Medicaid or if you're private pay, transferring from one nursing home to another is a relatively easy thing to do. That doesn't mean the nursing home you want to go to has availability. So when Emily works, I'll go to that in a second. When Emily works with our clients in devising a strategy and choosing nursing homes, we often talk about it in a similarity to applying to college. We have safety schools and reach schools. There are nursing homes that are closer to you, maybe a 3 or 4 star rating. I'm going to go into that just in a second. That are you would go to if you had to, if there was beds and there weren't beds at your preferred facilities. And then you're going to have facilities that like, these are the ones I really want to go to because of whatever reason, because they're providing the best care and they're the closest to my kids or whatever. And they may have a wait list. They may have a 3 or 4 year wait list. So you get your name on the wait list and go to the facility that you can. And then when you can transfer, go transfer. So but people don't realize that. And I get calls from people whose loved ones have been in nursing homes for a long time. And they describe to me how long they've been unhappy. And my heart breaks. I'm like, oh, like we could have moved. You don't stay. You don't have to stay. Doesn't mean that there's a whole lot better out there. Nursing homes are not amazing places. Even the best of them, they are what they are. They're designed for what they're designed for. And being homey, wonderful places to live is not what they're designed for. Okay, before I get into this next section here where we talk about some of the like nitty-gritty things about nursing homes, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to take a breather. Instead of bringing the microphone to you, I'll just repeat your question, okay? You asked me how the spend down program works. And I'm going to say that that's a great question for an elder law attorney. I am not a mass health expert. This is what I know. Well, I can give you this for perspective, but first I'm going to take a drink of my water. I can't stand when I'm listening to somebody and you could just hear. So, like I said, my dad was a nursing home administrator. So I grew up, and guess what? The dinner conversations were real fun at my table. But I learned that there were a number of years ago, Mass Health, Medicaid, pays for people who don't have money to pay for their care. They can go into a nursing home, and Medicaid will pay for them. Well, there were a lot of people who had wealth and assets. And what they did was they said, hey, I'm going to give all this to my kids, and I'm broke, and I'm going to a nursing home, and the government paid for them. Then the government was like, whoa, we can't do this anymore. So they put in what was then a 3-year look back. It's now 5 years. The rumor in our industry has been it will be 7 any day now. I have no idea, but it could be. They could sneeze and it could be tomorrow. I have no idea. Right now, it's a 5-year look back. And so I will tell you a quick story. Where am I with my time? I'll tell you a quick story. It helps that there's a clock right there. A sad story. I got a call from a woman. This is a couple years ago. And her dad had sold his house. He sold a house for about $800,000. And he gave $350,000 to one daughter and $350,000 to the other daughter. And he kept a little bit. He was fine. He moved into an apartment. He was renting. He was golfing. Everything was fine. And then it wasn't. Something happened, and he needed care. And he couldn't go back to where his condo, and they wanted to get him onto Mass Health because he didn't have the ability to pay privately. He couldn't afford an independent or assisted living, so he needed to go into a nursing home. The problem is that it was within 5 years that he gave his children each that $350. One of them bought a house. So what ended up happening, and I didn't stay involved because at the time we had the nursing home program. We couldn't help, and I'll get to that in just a second because there are not that many people we can't help, but I'll get to that in just a second. So what ended up happening, my understanding is the nursing home put a lien on her house. And he's a young guy. If he's there for, 7-8 years, when she goes to sell her house, all of the equity is going to the nursing home. So don't do that. Consult an elder law attorney. Okay, so I have two parents. One of them has Parkinson's disease. They're in their late 70s. Now we have some planning that we need to do because my dad owned nursing homes and he made a decent living and they have enough for themselves. But if my dad were to need to go into a nursing home and he were not eligible for Mass Health, and I can put that in the reverse as well with my mother, they do not have the assets. They will deplete the asset for the other spouse because they're only in their 70s. If they were in their 90s, it would be a different story. So we need to, and we did start, we have to redo it. I'm a perfect textbook. I'll tell you the story another day when it has a resolution of what not to do. But if you put your money in a Mass Health approved trust, again, consult with an elder law attorney. I have names if you want. NALA, the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys, is a trade organization that I like to refer people to if they need an attorney. They can work with you to move your money into it's usually an irrevocable trust, is my understanding. And if 5 years goes by, then your money is not protected. But in irrevocable trust, like with my parents, when they move their money into an irrevocable trust, some of it is not, you can't move in there. So they're working on that. But eventually, if they need money, they're going to have to ask me for it. And I will give it to them. It's their money. I will do whatever they want me to do with their money. But I'm the trustee and they are not in control of it. Because if they are in control of it, it's countable by Mass Health. So there's things, there's a lot. And again, whole other presentation. Did I answer your question enough? Okay. I was hoping you were going to say that. Okay, so now we will get into, and when I do this virtually, I tend to screen share, and we're running short on time, so I'm not going to get into too much of it, but you can get this link on my website. I will share this presentation, or you can just Google Nursing Home Compare. But the Medicare.gov CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, has a website. It is a very important website that you know of. It doesn't exist for assisted living. It's an entirely different process for me in working with families who are not looking at nursing homes. But if your care needs cannot be met anywhere else, and you cannot afford your care anywhere else, then what we do, and you can do this on your own, is you go into the Nursing Home Compare website and you put in your zip code. And I filter out the 1 and 2 star rated places. Every nursing home in the United States that has Medicare or Medicaid is in this website. That doesn't include private pay nursing homes. There are not that many of those, but they're not in here. So, but all of the other nursing homes are in here, and they all have a star rating between 1 and 5. It is not the same as Yelp or other places where you see the stars. And I am absolutely guilty of like buying things on Amazon because it has the most number of stars. Don't do that with nursing homes. So I'm going to explain just for a minute about the star system, and it's very complicated. If you go into this website, you can get a little bit of information, or you can spend days in there. It's like Alice's rabbit hole. You can keep going, and there's so much information. A lot of people like that. A few people like that. A lot of people hire us to do it. Emily can go right in because we do it all the time and just pull out the data that you need without having to go through all the muck. But if we look at my favorite number in the whole website, my favorite figure is the CNA hours per resident per day. It's in the staffing tab. Each tab, there's like 4 or 5 different tabs, has its own star. And those stars are derived differently. The big overall star rating is what's the word I'm looking for? Amalgamation? Combobulation? No, it's an amalgamation of the other stars. But the staffing tab, that information comes from the payroll reporting. So when the business office person submits payroll, it also goes to the CMS website. They can't fudge their staffing. and pretend they have more staffing than they do. And it's also accurate. It's not from 5 months ago. So when we look at the CNA hours per resident per day and we compare it with the state average, if I pull out 4 or 5 facilities in a given area and I look at that within the state average, there's a big difference. So I'm going to just make up a number because I haven't been in the website, honestly, in a couple of weeks. But let's just say the state average is like 1 hour and 46 minutes per resident per day. There are facilities that are like 48 hours. They're like a whole hour under the state average in terms of staffing. When people ask me, how do I know how long it will be when, and I do this wrong every time, when my loved one pushes their pull cord or pulls their push cord, every time I do it. And now I do it on purpose. But pulls their pull cord, how long is it going to be before somebody comes to them? You know who responds to those pull cords are the CNAs. Sometimes it's somebody else because that's just how it works, but most of the time it's going to be a CNA. There are some facilities that are staffing hours above the state average. That means that when someone pulls their pull cord, someone's going to come within a reasonable amount of time. Can I tell you in minutes? I can't. But a reasonable amount of time versus the ones that are staffed under state average. Those are the ones that are and you know what? Other figures that we pull out, and we map this all in a spreadsheet for you if you want us to do it. Bed sores should not occur. I mean, occasionally they do. If somebody's quadriplegic, I mean, there's obviously they do occur. But in a facility like this, on the whole, people should not be developing pressure ulcers. And what that tells me is that they are not attending to their patients. And if I correlate that number to the staffing, I'm almost always right in that the staffing is low in facilities that have very high. And so we can take this information, and you don't have to ask your neighbors. You don't have to do a Google search. We can tell you which facilities are providing the best care. You can find this out for yourself. It's right in this website. You have to, and you can even look at the state health surveys. Now that gets me to like the quality measures. So I was talking about pressure sores and I was talking about falls. The quality measures tab has its own star, and that one's a little trickier because it is based on the Department of Health surveys, which first of all are subjective. They're done by people. Anything that's done by a person is element of human error. So that you can't, it's hard to know, but they weren't doing surveys during COVID. They were doing infection control surveys. So some of these facilities haven't had a Department of Health survey since 2019. And I'll look and see what the data is. And it's not that data isn't relevant. It's just not that relevant. Management may have turned over 3 times since then. Hopefully not, but good questions to ask. There's a new tab. I haven't had a chance to explore it. Emily has. So thankful for that. But there's a new tab right in there, which I like. It has a nursing turnover. And so that's a helpful tab too. But the quality measures, the stars, not that they don't carry weight, but maybe less so. And so there are some 5-star rated places that the care is just There are some 3-star rated places that provide excellent, amazing care. Can I leave it at that? I would say, any 1 or 2-star rated places, they probably have some problems. It's not that they aren't giving good care, but they're having some problems. They may recover, but I would avoid them if you can. And then, just be critical. Know that there are some 3-star rated places that deserve a better rating, and there are some 4 or 5-star rated places that deserve a less good rating. But you can hire a professional. We're the only ones that I know of that have a program like this of its sort, but you can hire your own. I call them geriatric care managers. They are no longer called geriatric care managers. A number of years ago, they made a shift, and they are now called aging life care professionals, which I don't like because it sounds like they're life care professionals who are aging. Aside from that, though, it just doesn't roll off the tongue. And so most of us in the industry still say GCM. And when I say GCM, what I'm referring to is a nurse or a social worker who can help in coordinating your care. They do a lot more than like my company are placement specialists. I focus on the facility, I focus on what your needs are, and I help you find the right facility for your needs. But if you need care coordination, if you need someone to help you work with your attorney and your trust and understand how your care needs might, if there are family dynamics involved, there are geriatric care managers for that, and I work with a number of them, so I'm a good place to start with. And if your needs can't all be met with what I offer, there are certainly services out there. The Council on Aging, the outreach worker here on the Council on Aging, is absolutely the first place to start. Hopefully she'll refer you to me, but having a professional help you, and not just based on if they say they've had a number of people that have been there, that's great. Good. I'm glad you have. But look at the numbers. Because just know, that's where I think most people make mistakes, is they make referrals based on experience. It's okay to do that, but qualify it with also understanding what the numbers look like. If you have a conversation with, and I am especially in assisted living, I'm a huge proponent of not making a decision just based on the marketing director, right? Meet the executive director and the wellness nurse, because ultimately once you or your loved one move into the community, the marketing director has nothing to do with you anymore. Their job is to sell the next department. Ooh. Hi. Hold on. I'll fix it. It went to sleep. I was talking too much. All better. Okay. What was I talking about? I lost my train of thought. Stars. That's big. So don't just look at the numbers of stars. Try to understand what the stars are coming from, but look through that website, because honestly, there's the data you need to choose a good facility. Tour or virtual tour. Many nursing homes are not offering in-person tours, actually, but they do have some virtual tours, which are surprisingly more effective than I would have expected. I was a little bit on the virtual calling before COVID. I had a Zoom account before COVID, and I had one for each of my employees, and I remember telling them, have virtual meetings with your clients, not just phone calls. And this was their response to me. And then COVID happened, and of course, we all embraced it. In fact, there was an article that came out not that long ago in the Boston Globe where I was quoted. It was a beautiful article, but it was talking about the resiliency of seniors, because people who are in their 70s and 80s and 90s have lived through so much. My generation's so struggling and grappling with how to maneuver through the things that we're maneuvering through. And some of the seniors I know have looked back over Korea and World War II and just so much. And the benefit of that perspective, the resiliency and pivoting and being able to take on the technology that you all have to join the world as it is remarkable. Truly remarkable, and I am in awe of it, for one, and also a little jealous. I wish I had. I'm the type of person that wants to read the last chapter of the book, right? I want to know what happens. So the admissions director is your door in, but talk to the admission. If you can, you get a few minutes with the actual administrator or the nurse. Then that's who is managing the care. My favorite thing to do is look at the health survey and the tags and come up with a question to ask. So I'm going to make something up, but let's say on their most recent survey they had a deficiency for not following residents' care plan. Very vague, but it reads a little like legalese, only worse. Medicalese, is that a thing? It is now. And each tag is rated based on how many residents are affected. So few, many. So let's just say they had a tag where they have many residents affected by the fact that they weren't following a resident's care plan. If I was moving my loved one into that facility, I would take a few minutes of the administrator's time and I would say, I noticed that even though the survey was back in 2019, your facility received a deficiency in that many residents' care plans weren't being followed at that time. Can you talk to me about what the resolution to that deficiency was? And how can I be assured that my mom's care plan is going to be followed? Right? What did that just do? I don't care what the answer is. You know I'm paying attention to you. Right? I do care what the answer is. But an educated, and I hate to admit this, but I do think that it is true that in a nursing home, having presence, having a loved one present, and being an advocate and being aware and being educated will go a long way. Assisted living is a little bit different. It's like staying in a hotel, or there's different. But nursing homes require insight and advocacy. Ask for a copy of the dining menu and activity calendar. If there is a place that you really want to go to, you're on the wait list, it's a couple years, you're not ready yet, you don't even need a nursing home, it won't hurt to stay, especially as things start opening back up again. Go to their events and their car shows and the things that they have, and become part of the community. Wait lists in nursing homes are very interesting things. It is not like when you go to a restaurant with a party of 4 and you expect that the next table that opens that has a 4 top, they're going to call your name. In a nursing home, it's very dynamic. It's well beyond even what my ability to talk about it is here. Emily can speak to it in better detail again because she ran a nursing home. But nursing homes qualify who they're taking in. A person isn't just a person, and a bed isn't just a bed. So if they have a choice between different people, they're going to choose the one that is best suited for their facility. And certain medications that people are on are very expensive. Certain treatments people need are very expensive. In the nursing home, if somebody's on Medicaid, is going to take all of that. And so they may choose not to. And private pay and Medicaid, they shouldn't be able to choose a private pay resident over one who is on Medicaid. But nursing home wait lists are dynamic, and just because you're next on the list doesn't mean that there's going to be a bed available soon. But I do think that being a part of the community, staying in touch, staying involved will help your chances on the wait list. Okay, so if you are hospitalized, it is probably in your benefit to stay there 3 nights. Because then Medicare will cover your stay in a rehab. Yeah. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. And here's the problem with staying 3 nights in a nursing home. You don't want to stay 3 nights I said nursing home, hospital. Here's the problem with staying 3 nights in a hospital. You don't want to stay 3 nights in the hospital. And also, they don't want you to stay 3 nights. So you have a problem because you got to come in on both sides, right? Everyone wants you out. But those 3 nights are important because then Medicare will cover your stay, your loved one's stay in a rehab. So if you think that's going to be needed or beneficial, then be an advocate. Speak up. Hire somebody to do it for you. I hire somebody. I know I sound outspoken, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm out of my element. I don't know I don't want to say the wrong thing loudly. I probably do, but I don't want to. So hire somebody. The case managers in the hospital will be assigned to you, and will give you a list of places that you can go, and will set you up with VNA and all the things that you need if you're going home. But they're overworked and they're stretched and they're doing the best they can. And some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not. You're going to need advocacy. The other thing that happens is you'll be, a lot of times, sorry, hiccups. you'll be discharged with very little notice. What? Being discharged? I mean, I know this because these are the calls that I get from people that are panicked because they don't know what to do. And if you are going home, then you just set up VNA, durable medical equipment. I think I want to take the last minute. I think maybe I'm over minutes. We started late. I want to just clarify that I want to reiterate that someone only needs to live in a nursing home if their care needs cannot be met anywhere else, or if they can't afford the care they need anywhere else. Assisted living is not black or white. People call me all the time and say, well, I don't think my mom can go to assisted living. Well, what does that mean? Some assisted living communities really act more like independent living communities, and they don't provide a whole lot of care. If you need a lot of support, you can bring someone in from the outside, a home care agency, and you can stay there, or you can move out, and they'll typically say that you need a nursing home. But there are assisted living communities all the way on the other end of the spectrum, more each day, in fact, that can provide everything a nursing home can provide, with the exception of those things by regulation, the ventilators, injections, that kind of stuff. But if someone needs 2 CNAs and a mechanical lifting device, a Hoyer lift, or they're bedridden, they need assistance with incontinence, there are assisted living communities that can provide that. But they're private pay. And they're a little bit less expensive than privately paying in a nursing home. But they're a lot nicer. You have a whole apartment, and it's just, different. So just because your doctor, and I get this a lot, my doctor told me my mom needs a nursing home. Okay, great, let's talk about it. And then I hear that they don't have care needs that need a nursing home. So just know that it's not black or white. And this is a reiteration of what I went through. The crux of it is plan ahead, but you're here, so I'm preaching to the choir. And I can stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any questions. Hospice.
So a friend of mine recently was in hospice at the Doolittle home.
Okay.
Registered nurse retired.
Oh, okay.
I have to tell you that place is absolutely top of the line.
So
Yes,
so we're talking about hospice, and hospice is a benefit that can come in anywhere, at home or anywhere else. But yes, the Doolittle home is a rest home nearby here. Yep, and they specialize in that. They have a wing. They specialize in that. It's very.
they were amazing.
Yep, they are.
She was transferred. I won't mention the place she was transferred from in Milford. It was a disgrace.
Yeah.
When I went to visit her, her linen was soiled.
Yeah.
I said, do you want me to go talk to them? She said, please don't. I'll take care of it, because she was afraid.
Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah, choosing the right care is hard. I focus, and this again is a different presentation, but on 4 things. We look at care needs, we look at budget, we look at location, and then what else is important? Usually, like things like a parking spot or vegetarian or something like that. But if we qualify somebody based on what their care needs are, what they anticipate they might be, and their budget, it becomes very clear what their path should be. And then it's a matter of just choosing what options along the way would meet their goal. But I'm glad you liked it. Does anybody have any questions? Good. It's Emily, like I said, Emily designed it. This is like the 6th time I've given it. I ran a little long this time, but yeah.
If you want to put in a complaint about a nursing home, I tried to call several numbers in the state.
Okay. So if you want to put in a complaint about a nursing home, have you contacted the ombudsman? There's an ombudsman. They're usually volunteers. I want to say concierge, the receptionist at the nursing home will give you the ombudsman name and phone number if you call and ask. They have to. They're legally required. But each facility has their own. I mean, an ombudsman will cover like a general area, but I don't know who it is at the facility, but call and ask. So an ombudsman's job is to advocate. You call them if you have a problem, and they will help you. You can file a complaint with the Department of Public Health, but the ombudsman can help you with that also. Yes.